Of all the insane and twisted creations in Dark Souls, one might be Miyazaki's favourite. The one, the only, the executioner cannibal of Lordran, Smough. Miyazaki says he loves him because he looks insane. But this character is more than just twisted. Miyazaki hints at the secret of Smough. Instead of making him a member of the Four Knights, Miyazaki wanted to do something special, turn him from one of four knights into something almost heretical. And what heresy is will get to the core of what Dark Souls is about. Miyazaki can't help but hint at deep lore in interviews, and he was definitely hinting here. Smough. The name is infamous, a boss that gave every player nightmares, who has broken more controllers than perhaps the rest of Dark Souls 1's bosses combined. The sick executioner of Lordran, whose behaviour was so twisted he was rejected even by the corrupt lords of the land. But who was this man, if he even was a man at all? Born into this world, he was given a name, a troublesome name. Through a twist of fate, we do not know exactly what his name is. In the Japanese, his name is Sumo, of course referring to his shape and to his style of leg stomping. However, in English, his name is spelt S-M-O-U-G-H. Is this pronounced Smough or Smough? Another character, Hawkshaw Goth, fortunately pronounces his own name.
Now, watch and see how Goth hunts dragons.
So we like to think it's pronounced Smough, but so we can all get along, we're going to call him Smough for this video. Either way, this name is spelt very similarly to Goth's, and this similarity is important as it brings something into question: his blood. Smough is enormous and bears a similar name to a giant character. Was he born with giant's blood? If so, we know by now he would have been born into prejudice, as giants were not respected in the culture of Lordran. While later in life he is discriminated against for his behaviour, if he was born into a disrespected class, he may have suffered rejection since his early childhood. His early life is a mystery, but we know that he eventually became the executioner of Lordran. This again would imply that he did not win the lottery of birth. If executioners in Lordran share anything like their history in our world, they were typically disliked. The role carried no respect with the public and was reserved for people on the fringes of society. Outcasts. In Christian societies, it was doubtful that God would forgive what was effectively murder, and even a non-believer would have worries that the dark aspects of your job would rub off on your character. However, executioners were often very well paid precisely because of the undesirable consequences of their role. Since it was social suicide, it better have a good salary. If Smough was discriminated against from birth, it would make perfect sense that he became an executioner, given the benefits of pay and that he had little to lose. If in civilian life he was already disliked and discriminated against, perhaps he would value the status of executioner. Underneath the enormous armour, he is still huge, but not fat. He is ripped. However, once we get his armour, there is another coincidence. It is said it can be worn by a human, but not without great difficulty, again implying that Smough himself may not have been a human in the first place. Whether he went into his role by necessity or by choice, his character can only have darkened with time. The dark role of executioner has an effect, but Smough was ambitious, very ambitious, to rise further in rank. Smough dreamed of becoming one of the Four Knights, the mighty warriors of Gwyn. Ornstein, Artorias, Kieran and Goth were heroes, and Smough hoped to stand among them. It wasn't an impossible dream. After all, Smough is a formidable foe when we fight him alongside Ornstein. And even if he did have giant blood, the giant Hawkshaw Goth counts among the Four Knights. At first, he does everything right to progress his ambitions. Smough certainly impresses in the role society gave him. All evidence suggests he was a successful executioner, and he seems to have been rewarded handsomely. When we meet him, he wears armour that, though grotesque, could only have been made by a master craftsman. His hammer, which we do not know if it was used in executions, is also a work of art. It is stamped all over with the same sigil that is stamped on the weapons and armour of the gods. The argument that the Channeler's armour and Smough's armour were designed by the same master smith certainly hits on something. They were both drawn as the first two members of a planned 4 knights. I remember the Channeler's design was put forward around the same time as Smough's, and we all took to referring to them as the 4 knights, Knights C and D if I remember correctly. In addition to that, even harbouring hopes of becoming one of the 4 knights shows that his career as executioner has garnered him great respect, despite its unappealing reality. Another piece of evidence that he was remarkably successful in his job is that they can't bear to lose him even after it is revealed just how twisted he is. But first, his rise, before his fall. As he progresses in his role of executioner, we know from his great hammer that he loved his work. This is already gruesome canon, but it doesn't stop there. It also explains that Smough ground the bones of his victims into his own feed, ruining his hopes of being ranked with the 4 knights. In the Japanese description, it states that he ate the flesh and blood of his victims, a phrase that implies his own family. Since we feel that it's unlikely he would be the executioner for his relatives, we think it instead refers to the heretical aspect of cannibalism in Dark Souls. We will explain the special place that eating one's own kind has in this universe later. Does Smough start this activity immediately once he is executioner? Did he start it before being executioner and, like many monsters, chose their role in society to have better access to their prey? Or did the proximity to this necessary task of society inspire him? We believe he didn't start this habit immediately, but it was something he turned to with time. We also don't believe that it was a one-off, but that it took quite some time for people to notice just what Smough was up to. Given the lifetimes of lords or lord-like creatures in Dark Souls, and that we know the 4 knights have not fought together for centuries, Smough has clearly had a remarkably long life. Just how many victims did he eat over a long career as executioner? As is often the case in areas of society we'd rather not look at, terrible things can go on for a long time before they reach the light. If he wasn't a monster when he chose to become an executioner, he has now become one, and with no limit on his supply, Smough has eaten well. Is he mad as well as evil? Certainly, there are some interesting connections between another character who is perceived as mad and our peculiar executioner. Smough and Seath are the only 2 characters whose items Frampt refuses to give more than a single soul for, an interesting connection we believe we may have an answer for. Once his monstrous habits come to light, the powers that be respond in a peculiar way. They allow Smough to continue his role. Smough has continued to serve until the present day. He is banned from ever becoming one of the 4 knights, but apart from that, he seems to have continued as normal. We know from Dark Souls 3 that he was the last knight to defend the city, and his continuation in his role was sanctioned. In the present day, a lift is even custom built for his size in the centre of the capital. He is not stripped of his masterwork armour and weapon, which one would think he is no longer fit for. Indeed, there is even a Smough statue in the capital that seems to honour him in the same style as Ornstein, one of the 4 knights. No, the only evidence of punishment is ruining his hopes of being ranked with the 4 knights. He is not locked up or sentenced to death, hardly a fitting punishment. It shows just how useful he is and how good he is at what he does, and perhaps just how undesirable the role is and how difficult it would be to replace him. It does make you wonder who the real monsters are in Lordran today. Is the role of executioner so dark and so tempting that the powers that be would rather keep the monster of Smough than risk initiating another? Better the devil you know. It is all very peculiar. The manner in which society reacts to its crimes says something about the society as a whole, and Lordran's society doesn't seem to think the consumption of its citizens is all that terrible. With time the sun fades and Smough sees the gods leave the city, which leads us to another mystery. Does Smough know the sun is an illusion, or is he seduced by the illusion of Guinevere? If his battle companion Ornstein did leave Lordran as sequels seem to imply, is our executioner aware of this? And does he know that his ultimate role in defending the city is to die in the progression of the chosen undead? We cannot know the answer, but for someone who has had a role of executioner and partaken in some of the darkest rituals in society, as well as the most twisted crimes, he is unlikely to be naive. So perhaps he simply wishes to stay where the action is. Which brings us to the modern day. It seems that the Smough we meet is real, since we know from Dark Souls 3 that he was the last knight to defend the city. We meet him at a crucial point in our quest. As we have mentioned, he and Ornstein are one of the most challenging bosses in the game. His beautifully crafted armour and hammer are not just for show. His defences are enormous, and his hammer incredibly powerful. Not only can he one-shot you if you're not careful, but his weak points aren't where you'd think. His eyes are not where they seem. They are not in the chubby-cheeked face that seems too high above his shoulders, nor are they behind the two eye-like parts of the bulbous neck. Smough actually looks out from behind two slits, protected by this double illusion. In the boss fight, he is likely to kill us over and over. He shows his strength and he shows his ruthlessness. But he shows much more. He shows his attitude to his peers and to the society around him. Just as he loved the violence in his work, he seems to take great pleasure in the fight. The soul of Smough describes him as the eerily gleeful executioner. And he is gleeful. He laughs during our fight. His voice echoes in the hollow chambers of his armour as he chases us around. He takes no care over the rune, destroying pillars of the beautiful capital in each attack. And when his friend falls by our hand, he crushes his companion without delay, absorbing his power. And as he does so, he laughs. Should we kill them the other way around, Ornstein simply lays a hand on his fallen companion. But Smough doesn't even notice the twitching fingers of Ornstein, who may yet be saved. He is a gruesome man. After we kill him, we can get his armour and his axe. Miyazaki forced the developers to make sure that it was equipable as a human. This again adds mystery of whether Smough was a human in the first place. Despite his enormous size, could he have been human? If he was human, it may give some insight as to why his diet ruined his ambitions, and why Frampt refuses to trade anything but one soul for his items. How is cannibalism different in Dark Souls than in our world? Smough is not the only instance where we find it. When we save the pyromancer Laurentius, he is in a barrel. He is trapped by some large women, each nicknamed a butcher. One stands in the half-light, chopping large, unidentified pieces of meat, while the other secretly guards the room Laurentius is trapped in. They intend to eat Laurentius despite the fact that it seems they are human. Their weapon describes it all in graphic detail. Giant butcher knife wielded by the undead, man-eating cook lurking in the depths. More a tool for subduing and preparing live catches than an actual weapon. Those who have faced this deadly blade have a deeper sense of how helpless prey must feel. Later, we encounter man-eater Mildred. She also is, presumably, a cannibal. Further on, we meet demons who were once human and now eat humans. Humans that are ferried as part of an agreement between Izalith and Anor Londo. If you want to know more about this lore, check out our Demons lore video here. And the city of New Londo is underwater, sunk for the sin of humanity consumption. This is how we can understand Smough's heresy. Some consumption of humanity is not done in the bodily form, but with the crystal sprite. In the world of Dark Souls, there is power from sacrifice and power from death, and consumption of that death. Look how strong the butcher ladies are, and this form of strength is very similar to the sketches of the body of Smough. Perhaps Smough has become so huge due to his unique diet. This secret is everywhere. Our whole quest is about amassing and concentrating the power of slain lords in ourselves. The bonfires literally burn and break down with flame what Smough ground down to eat in his feed: bones. The demons bartered their fair share of humans from Lordran after their war. As part of our bell-ringing escapade, they get a share. And eventually, the chosen undead burns themselves, their bones and flesh, in sacrifice to relink the flame. Being a cannibal has a very different meaning in the world of Dark Souls. If Smough ate his flesh and blood, i.e. his own, it may be referring to the allegorical meaning of Dark Souls. While all of society feeds off the sacrifice of its members, all of us must burn some of ourselves for the sun of society to shine brightly. But those with the power to do it more directly should not take advantage of their station. Smough cannot become one of the four knights because he has broken the rules that those in power should follow. Frampt represents the natural cycles of the world. He rejects Smough the same way he rejects Seath, because both of them have tried to manipulate and take advantage of the fundamental rules of the world. Seath is attempting to live forever and warp life into what he chooses, and Smough is seeking to use his supply of bones and flesh to kindle his own strength, as opposed to simply carrying out his societal role. This is proven in Dark Souls 3. The description for Smough's hammer says, "Twisted great hammer associated with Smough, the last knight to remain at his post, guarding the ruined cathedral. Restore HP while attacking, a carryover from Smough's past as an executioner." The sense of life from death, whether it's in the formation of a sun or in literal physical strength, is a real thing in Dark Souls. This is why Smough's actions are heretical, because he should not take advantage of this process and his role to use it for his own corrupt gains. The imagery of his armour is perhaps a symbol of this process. While the symbol that is stamped all over it may be inspired by the imperial seal of Japan, a chrysanthemum flower, we wonder if the flower on so many of the Lord's weapons and armour is in fact a lotus. Just like the great sun rises thanks to the dark sacrifice that we would rather not acknowledge, a lotus flower is beautiful despite growing in mud and murky waters. Just as the role of executioner is dark, so are many of the essential roles that turn the wheels of mankind. Smough, after all, has not only flowers, but cogs stamped upon his equipment. Instead of serving society so that it flourishes for all, he is trying, himself, to bloom. His appearance and armour is not only an illusion in terms of where his eyes are, but also because their darkness and sense of insanity hides a blossoming flower. Amongst the spikes and horrific curves are great petals ready to bloom. And this sense of illusion may be why he isn't punished, why he stays in his role. Smough does not care if Guinevere, Anor Londo and the sun are illusions. To him, everything may have always been an illusion. He has seen the darkness of one of the essential cogs that turned society. He may be immune to the fading sun because wasn't it always an illusion? Wasn't the beauty of Gwyn's society always hiding a dark secret? With every bonfire in the land consuming the bones of society's members, of course they cannot get rid of him as executioner. It would make them hypocrites. The lords consume their followers just as Smough did, he just did it more directly. And while they deny the fact that they are killing and consuming their followers to maintain the world they live in, Smough is in no denial. He knows the truth, and he loves it.